Welcome everyone to the May Frictionless Data Community Call. It's a pleasure to have you all here. So today, as you know, we're going to hear from Augusto Herman, who's going to tell us about FastATL, which is a software library to integrate heterogeneous data and to publish in open data portals like Seeken. And he's going to tell us about how he uses it in combination with the Frictionless framework and the Frictionless tabular data package. Before we jump into Augusto's presentation, who actually presented that also at CSVConf for anyone who was there as well. Let's do, as usual, a quick round of introduction so that everybody knows everyone here. And as a reminder, Augusto's presentation is going to last in between 20 and 30 minutes, and then we'll have some time for discussion after that. So if you have questions, keep them for after the presentation. But let's go with introductions. I'm Sara Petti. I'm the Frictionless Data Community Manager. I live in Bologna, Italy, where it's finally a sunny day. It's been raining a lot. We had some floods in the last couple of weeks, but now hopefully everything is getting better. And I'll pass it on to Jonathan. One thing that I wanted to mention, let's maybe keep Augusto at the end so that when he introduces himself, then he can directly jump into the presentation. But Jonathan, over to you.
Right, my name is Jonathan Mitchell. I work for a company called Innovi Health, and I'm based out of Washington State in the United States. Happy to be here. How about over to Nikesh?
Thank you, Jonathan. Hi, everyone. My name is Nikesh Palami. I'm based in Nepal. I'm the International Open Data Lead at the Foundation. Yeah, glad to be here. Over to you, Jesper.
Yeah, I'm Jesper Zititz. I live in northern Germany. I work for the federal government here, the state chancellery, and I'm responsible for the open data activities in the federal state of Schleswig-Holstein, which is the northernmost federal state in Germany. And I pass it on to Keith.
Hello, I'm Keith. I'm a postdoc at the National Institutes of Health. Also happy to be here. And I'll pass it on to Oleg if you have your mic today.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Hi everyone, this is Oleg. I'm a software developer out in Switzerland and very happy to see your faces. And I'll pass the ball over to Vitor. I don't think you've been up yet.
Hello everyone. I have a problem here with my cam, so that's why it's off. But I work with Augusto, and he's present today, invited us. Actually, he always invited us to join in. We are at the Brazilian government, and have a lot of interest in open data as well. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Victor. Would you like to pick someone else to go after you?
Well, let me see here. I'll pick Antoine. Is that right?
Hi everyone, I'm Antoine Blanchard. I work at the University of Bordeaux. I'm a data manager. I'm new to Frictionless and so happy to be here. And over to Mark.
I'm not sure Mark can actually speak. So would you like to pick someone else?
Evgeny?
Okay, Evgeny cannot speak either. You have no luck today, Antoine. I'm sorry.
Eduardo?
We're just introducing ourselves, Eduardo. I think you came a bit later, but if you can just quickly introduce yourself and then pick someone else to go after you.
Sorry, it's for me. Oh yeah, sorry, I was turning on my microphone. Hello, my name is Eduardo. I'm a friend of Augusto Herman. I work with him, also with data engineering, and I'm here to see the presentation of our framework FastATL that he's going to present. Thank you.
Thanks, Eduardo.
Eduardo, can you please choose someone else to continue?
Okay, let me see. Did Marcelo speak?
No, not yet. Thanks, Edu. Hi, everyone. Marcelo here. I also work with Augusto, Vitor, and Eduardo at the Ministry of Management and Innovation and Civil in Public Services, and it's a pleasure to be here again. I'll pass it on to, has everyone spoken? Sorry, I'm not sure.
No worries. So besides Augusto will go at the end. Sassi still needs to introduce herself, and Salomao, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly.
Okay. Salomão.
Sassi, would you like to go first, and then Salomao can introduce himself later?
I'm Sassi, I'm from Nepal, and I currently work as developer in Open Knowledge Foundation. So I'll pass it to Salomao.
Oh, he just left. Augusto, over to you then.
Thank you, Sarah. A pleasure to be here as always. And this time I'm going to present. Let me try share my screen. Just a moment. There we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So this presentation is like a new version of the one I presented at CSVConf a little over a month ago. I'm going to talk about how we use Apache Airflow and FastETL to integrate data sources, publish open data, and also we use frictionless data a little bit here and there. As for myself, I have background in mathematics and computer science, knowledge management, IT management, natural language processing. But over the last few years, I have been working in data engineering. I have a background also in open data. I'm one of the people who started the open data policy in Brazil and federal government in 2010 until 2018. I am civil servant since 2004. You can also find these the slide deck on my website on this address. And I must also mention the other members of the team who helped made FastETL. Some of them, like Eduardo and Vitor and Marcelo, are here. So when we go into questions, maybe if it's good that if there's something I can't answer, they can help me, of course. We work at the Secretariat for Management and Innovation, and that is in the Ministry of Management and Innovation of Public Services in Brazil. We take care of the data lake there, and we ingest data from several data sources. And this data is useful not only to build dashboards and make data analysis and all sorts of things. About FastETL, it is a free and open source plugin for Apache Airflow, and it has features that are useful for making ETL pipelines, or ELT also, which is some discussion nowadays, whether or not you first load and then transform. We do that a lot as well. It's called FastETL, not because it's particularly optimized for performance, but it speeds up data pipeline development process, because the things that we do most often, we can just call the library and get development done a lot faster. So that's why we made it, and also to reuse code. We have been using some of that code since 2019. So if you look at the repository in GitHub, you'll see that the history goes a long way. But only recently, only this year, we have actually made sure that it is more usable to people outside the organization, like, for instance, translating README and other documents to English, and also doc strings and things like that. We also love free and open source software, and we'd like to share knowledge with other teams, expand the network, our network of developers, and also to get feedback and contributions to FastETL itself. About Apache Airflow, I am aware that maybe not everyone is familiar with it. It's a free and open source software for scheduling and orchestrating tasks. Usually that has to do with data. They are organized in directed acyclic graphs. So that means it always flows in one direction. You can't have cycles, loops. And we chose Airflow because of the active community. If you look at GitHub, you'll see that it's very often has new versions, new releases, and the issues are very dynamic. And also because we chose Airflow because it gives visibility into the ETL process and gives us notifications when something breaks. We get a link to the log and can look up whatever caused the pipeline to break. And we use it along with FastETL to synchronize data sources from other databases in the data lake. Data sources could be databases, could be spreadsheets, other files. We also publish open data on the Open Data portal. We notify people about publications in the official gazette, the National Official Gazette. When someone wants to know if like the name of a person appeared there, you get a notification of this list of people. You get a report. The notifications can be sent by email or Slack. We also manage our sprints with Scrum in Trello, and we also read the Trello API to manage that. FastETL features full of incremental replication of tables. It supports SQL Server, Postgres, and also MySQL only for sources, not destination databases for now. It can load data from Google Sheets and also spreadsheets on other places like in Windows sharing, SMB or Samba. We can extract CSV from SQL. It can clean data using some data patching tasks. Like I will give it some more concrete examples later for mapping message geographical coordinates, for instance. We can query the National Gazette. We can use OpenStreetRouting machine to calculate distances between 2 points in the map using the OpenStreetMap map. It can use CCAN's API or dados.gov.br, the Brazilian data portal API, to update the dataset metadata. I mentioned both of them because they recently changed the API and we can no longer use the CKN API there. It's a different API. We support both. We use frictionless data packages to write the dictionaries, like in text, open document text formats. That's something that people often want to see. I have an example about that as well later. So here's an example of code to create an operator in Airflow to copy from one database to another. We just define the task ID, that connection ID, the schema and table, and whether or not you want to truncate the destination table, some optional things like if you want to copy the table comments are a table description or a column descriptions, and that has a lot to do with table schema in Frictionless. We'll see that later as well. And how many chunks will divide the job should divide the reading and writing of data. So that's what's supported in the B2GB operator. Another example, you can also extract from a database to CSV, and likewise just tell the parameters and it creates the operator for you in Airflow. And here's an example on how we can create a Rodot. Rodot is a sister project for FastETL that generates these notifications. When something comes up in the official gazette, you just tell the terms you want to search. It can be directly on the YAML file in which you configure the searcher, or you can read it from a database, and you can also define where you want to send the report to, whether by email or also Slack is supported, Discord as well. Here's an example of a report I received when I wanted to be notified about occurrences of open government and access to information law. And then the report comes with the direct link to the document, to the law or bylaw where the term, the keyword was mentioned. We can also copy data from Google Sheets to a database. For that, there's the G sheet to DB operator. Again, it just tell it the parameters like the spreadsheet ID, sheet name, and the connection ID, and which schema and table in the database. We can also add a custom column. For instance, this is often used to create backups of spreadsheets, and you might want to add a column on when that backup was created. And just show you some more examples of the FastETL functionality, we will showcase this project called TaxiGov. It's a ride system for public officials using taxis, not for commute, but for going from the office to another office for meetings. It's not allowed to for for going home or coming to work. There have been over 9,000 rides since 2016. We have over 35,000 users in all of the federal government and the whole country of Brazil. And it's used by 163 public organizations on not only federal governments, but also local governments. And what's interesting about this case is how many data sources we have. We have 29 different databases from 5 different companies, which are the suppliers for these services. And it has many fields of unstructured text, just loose text, something that people write, on the field, and we must figure out the actual value that should go in the field. So we have some mapping, some data mapping from this messy data. So we see how we can do that with FastETL. We collect data from those 29 sources, then clean it with FastETL patchwork and load it into a unified schema. So 29 different data sources with different schemas, and at the end we have a single schema. And we also, for open data, we must take out the parts of data that has privacy restrictions or some sensitive data. And the whole process is finished in under an hour. And here are this schematics is something that Airflow shows us. It's not something I have drawn here, but something that Airflow gives us with its datasets feature. Here are the databases of origin, of destination, and the processes, and you can navigate between those and the DAGs, the pipelines that do this. And this is just a portion, a small piece of one pipeline. It's the one that cleans data using the patchwork from FastETL. And here we can, for instance, clean the geographical coordinates. Some have wrong decimals separator. They're all text fields in the original databases. Sometimes they have a wrong signal of the latitude and longitude, or values are multiplied by some factor. They have the decimal separator in wrong places. And this is the code we use for data patching. It uses some heuristics, like trying to figure out which the actual latitude and longitude numbers should be based on the messy number you find in the data. And this is another example of a data cleaner that uses a mapping that we do that mapping in a Google spreadsheet. And periodically, this is only useful, by the way, if you have new values only not very often, because it's like the values are more or less stable, and only like once a month or once a week you get new values, then you can use this kind of thing. All the values happening on the database are appear on one column, and the other column you select the value that should be mapped to. So this class on FastETL helps with that. You just pass the ID of the spreadsheet, and then it maps the value. Here's another example of using the metadata from table descriptions for copying table descriptions and column descriptions that FastETL supports. It's the table comments class. You can use this to read the descriptions from Postgres or Microsoft SQL Server. And we use this. This is an example that is for open data. We read the column descriptions from the database and then record a tabular data package that is with frictionless data. And that is a table schema, YAML, there on the left. And there on the right is the data dictionary that is created with the document templated data dictionary operator. You just pass the parameters to the operator, and it creates a document for you, just with the information it read from the tabular data package. And this is the pipeline for open data publication of Taxigov. And here's an example of using the frictionless framework to read this open data. You just import the package class and pass the URL, and then you have all those resources, like one for all rides in the last 7 days. It's like a lighter data set for someone working with data visualizations. We'll see an example of that just on the next slide. We can also some of those resources have the entire history of rides, and one of them, Passageiros Solicitantes, this is the one that has aggregate data that shows how many rides each person individually, each public servant has used, but only if that they have been more than 3 or more on the month, because that was requirement that we do not individually, these rides are individually identified there, but the name of the person is not. But on this other table of aggregate data, we do have the name of each person and the amount of the value of the rides in the monetary value, the distance they travel, and the amount of rides they took in each month. And this example is my own name. I searched there. And this is an example of visualization that I did with the lighter table, which contains only 7 days. And it's a heat map of points of origin and destination. And this is updated dynamically every day. So this is the presentation, but actually this is an iframe of this more complete visualization here that you can see. And in this visualization, we can also see like individual rides and information on the justification for like the reason that they travel, the time of the timestamp, and other information, like if it was a meeting or to carry documents or things like that. For the FastETL framework, you can find it at this GitHub repository. We can also install it with pip, but we must first install those library to your environment, because to support SQL Server in Python, you also need them. And here are some things I use in presentation and my contact information. So if you have any questions or feedback after you start experimenting with FastETL, I'd be glad to address them.
Thanks so much, Augusto. That was really awesome. I'm going to paste also in the chat the link to Augusto's website where you can find the presentation if you want to have a look. But let's open the floor to questions, maybe. Anyone has comments or questions for Augusto? Yes, Jesper, go ahead.
Yes, really interesting, really interesting. Thank you very much for the presentation. I wonder, why did you choose Apache Airflow? My service IT service provider, they recommended Apache NiFi, which seems to be very similar, and I can't decide which is the better one. Did you compare both, or was Apache Airflow already set before you started your work?
Well, I got on the team on 2020, and the decision was already made, but we have been watching some other task schedulers, open source over the years that have developed even after Apache NiFi was, I believe it was available already at that time, but there are other ones. And we already had invested in Airflow, but even then, we think that Apache Airflow does address our needs very well. And as I said, I think the greatest thing so far, it's one of the greatest things, is how we can easily address problems that inevitably appear in data pipelines and something breaks and we can fix it. And we used to automate almost everything, as I mentioned, even our Scrum methodology of work or tasks, and we use Airflow to copy that to database and do other things. So hope no, I'm not sure if I have answered your question.
I think that, and I get back to my IT service provider and tell them to look again at Apache Airflow. Maybe they did not investigate enough, but they are not sure which framework to choose. And your work is a good example that Apache Airflow works for these public administration data processing workflows.
All right, and also for everyone, feel free to reach out to me if you need more evidence to support the decision of using Airflow or want to know more about our work here.
I just wanted to chime in and make a general suggestion. When I'm thinking about trying to choose a framework or tool for some long-term project, a good way to get some sense of what might be good is to go to there's a site where you can compare the GitHub stars over time. And so you can essentially see the trend of a project and see whether it's kind of was already peaked in activity or if there's another one that's starting to take it on. So if you're thinking more like 5 years out or something, it can be a good way to make sure you're not investing time in a project that's likely to be outcompeted. And then if you do see something that's really taken off compared to another one, it could be worth looking into why people are moving to that. Sometimes there's no good reason, it's just hype, but it's a place to start. Also, Augusto, great talk and really cool work.
Thanks, Keith. That was a really pertinent observation. Yeah, we do that as well. Whenever, not only with Airflow, but every bit of library or technology we want to adopt, that is certainly a factor when we consider using. Also, not only stars, but also we look at the commit frequency and the issues there, if there are people are answering it, and or if they are stale like for months, then that's not a good sign.
Yeah, it's very true. I was at a project recently where also just the interaction with the devs can make a difference. Like sometimes they're very mature and thoughtful and responsive, and other times they'll just like immediately yell at you for not figuring out what the problem was or things like that. And that's kind of indicative of what the experience of working with them long term is likely to be.
I absolutely agree.
Do the frictionless descriptions play a large role in your processing? I saw it on several slides. In one point you mentioned it explicitly, but in other slides there seem to be some bits of frictionless descriptions. Do they play a role in the transformation process in describing which structure to convert in which other structure? For example, have you described those 29 data sources? Did you write a frictionless description for those sources and then use these descriptions to do the transformation, or does that work differently?
No, we actually have been using frictionless mostly at the other end on the data publication of open data and things like that. And with the data sources, and not really. We have been using other tools to like document data data origin, how to call it, data lineage. Like we use Data Hub for tracking, and it has good integration with Apache Airflow. So whenever something reads from a data source, it's automatically recorded there. But yeah, I particularly myself, I'm the frictionless data evangelist in the team, so I have been trying to use it more. So But so far, it's mostly at the open data end of the spectrum.
Thanks, Augusto, for being a frictionless data evangelist. Do we have other questions?
I have a third question, also in regard to this frictionless description. That's when you mentioned it explicitly. You have this document template for data dictionary describer converter. Does that, or would that also work standalone without the fast ETL process? Because I think that's pretty cool to have this, to put a frictionless description into it and get a nice documentation for this data set.
For now, no, because Apache Airflow is a dependency and FastETL is a plugin for Airflow. But you may make a good point. Maybe that would be useful outside Airflow. Maybe we could make it a separate package. I don't know if there's enough interest in that functionality. By the way, that was really quick in the slide, but we have two classes for that. We can take a data package with a schema, just the JSON or YAML, and with that create an open document text format, a new one, or but that is not very, I mean, you don't have lots of formatting options, like you want this header here and this particular font style or things like that. It's just a basic document. Or you can use an open document text that you already put the fonts you want, the header and things like that. And you then specify the specific header, like the heading, the specific heading in the document where you want to replace with data from the data package. So you format everything, and that part of the document will be replaced with metadata from the table description with the columns and everything. You can also format your table there. You can create a table and format with specific colors and things like that. And you set a parameter. I want to replace the table with this ID, and then the class, the software, the package does replace that table with the content from the table data package.
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea to encourage people to use the frictionless description instead of writing their documentation in Excel or something else, because they would have a real benefit in describing their data in a nice machine readable way, and we can do so much other things if we have this machine readable frictionless description and not these ugly handwritten. I can pose an example how that typically look like such a description. I think you're familiar with these horrible tables someone wrote, and they are absolutely not machine readable. And it would, I think that could be an interesting piece of software to encourage people to write it in a good way, because they have both. They have the machine readable description I am asking for, and they have their nice nice presentation to put in the PDF file. Yeah, I think it would be a win-win, such a converter.
Auf jeden Fall, yes, that was the idea behind creating this. Also, sharing it in an open source package was to encourage people to do that more.
Do we have other questions?
By the way, I want to also thank you for inviting me to do this presentation, and also congratulate our colleagues here from my team, Vitor, Eduardo, Marcelo, for They spared no effort to make FastETL ready for presenting in CSVConf. So by the start of the year, we didn't even have a possibility to do pip install, but they worked hard to make it possible to make it good to show and easy to use.
Well done to the full team then.
Sorry?
I was just saying well done to the full team.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Okay, if there's no other question. I had one just out of curiosity, actually. You mentioned at a certain moment that the datos.gov.br is not using anymore the CCAN API, and I just was wondering why.
Me too. That was a surprise for us when they decided to change it. I believe that they internally use CCAN still, but they do not expose the CCAN API anymore and decided to create another API that we must use. So yeah, and we had to support that as well. Some public organizations in Brazil have their own CCAN instances, and then the portal harvests that. So if we manage to convince our ministry to have our own local open data portal, we maybe can go back to using the CCAN API once again. But for now, we support both.
Thanks. It was funny to see that one of my colleagues at OKFN apparently asked you the same question at CSV conference. I was not there. Sadly, I was on another track, but it's funny to see that.
I believe that they mentioned they wanted to have some more control on optional fields that they want to make mandatory and things like that. Maybe some fields of metadata that people weren't filling out in the CCAN API. And I'm not sure. I heard that, but I'm not sure.
Okay, that's interesting to know. Okay, it's your last chance to give a last comment or a last question for Augusto. Otherwise, I'll just move on to just general announcement. We don't have a lot. The only thing that I wanted to mention, maybe since we're having a Brazilian speaker today, there's good news from the Open Knowledge Brazilian chapter. Their project called Querido Diário, which is a project to query the municipal gazettes, has joined today the Nobel Prize Summit in Washington. So that was a huge win. It's great. I'll paste the link to the Querido Diário here if you want to go and explore the project. It's quite nice. They don't use frictionless data, unfortunately, that I know, but it's still a very nice open source project. Other than that, the other thing that I wanted to announce is that the next call, it's going to be on June 29th. We don't have anything yet scheduled in the agenda for presentation and stuff. Oh, Augusto, you wanted to say something, sorry.
I just wanted to mention that on the sister project for FastETL, Rodo, that I mentioned there, that this notification of keywords in the gazettes, it also is compatible and uses Querido Diário and also notifies about occurrences in gazettes of the local governments.
Oh, excellent. That's good to know.
That's one of those examples was actually one of my slides.
Good. Oh, that comes perfectly like. Yes, so other things, not much. Just if anyone here wants to present something on the 29th of June, it's possible. There's a link in the agenda doc to a form, or if you want, you can just contact me on Slack or Matrix. Yes, I think that's it from us. Anyone wants to bring up anything?
Yeah, I have a bit a general question. If this is a topic for our community call, if I have a strange data set to discuss, how to describe it best with a frictionless table specification, is there some? I know the Slack channel and the element the matrix chat, but is it also with the community call a place to discuss these somehow strange data sets and to get ideas how to do this best, or is there another format where we could do this?
Thanks, yes, but I think it could be fun to have like in June, maybe you can bring your weird data sets and we can also like have a look all together and see how to best describe it. I think this could be a fun activity, slightly different from the usual community calls that we have, but why not, I say. I don't know if anyone here has anything strongly against it or anything else, but I think why not?
Just today, I found a really weird data set, a really weird format of a CSV file, they call it, but it's not CSV at all. Strange separator characters, strange fields, interesting from our national government. That would be something. I think it's quite easy if you understand what's in the data to describe it with frictionless. But that's interesting. But I also have these really different formatted files where I don't have an idea how to write it to that others can use these files.
Yeah, sure. Augusto.
There's also the age-old question on how to split up some data sets, because you have a bunch of data, and how much how you divide, by which criteria you divide that data set, and what goes into a resource. There's several ways of dividing up that data. You can divide it by time, like month or year. You can divide it by region or other criteria, and how large of a file is too large. So there are a lot of considerations that have been in our heads since the beginning.
Yes, but maybe I'll follow up with you on Matrix so that we can sort of like coordinate, but this could be a good candidate, I think, for the next call. Yes.
And others can bring their strange examples too, not only my findings, but I think there are other interesting examples out there.
Yeah, that could be fun, actually. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it for us. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Augusto, again, for this great presentation and for sharing with us this great tool. As usual, the recording of the call will be online tomorrow, and then next week at some point I will publish a recap blog as well. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks again, Augusto, and see you all in a month, and meanwhile in the community chat. Bye all. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you.